Everybody. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Susie Young. I am a clinical oncology dietitian, and I cover clinics existing in the states of Washington, Idaho, Nevada, and Arizona. And I am joined today by my lovely coworker, Karen Randall. She too is a clinical oncology dietitian, and her clinics exist in the states of Michigan, Indiana, Virginia, and North Carolina. So today we're going to talk about reducing our carbon footprint one bite at a time. Now, if you have questions, please put those into the question and answer spot. And if you would like to participate to some of the questions that we're going to be asking during the presentation, please put those into the comment box and Karen will read those as they come through. Okay, are you ready, Karen?
I am ready. Let's go, Susie.
Yay.
Great topic.
Happy Earth Day, everybody. If you don't know, Friday is Earth Day. It's an annual event, and it was originated in 1970 to support environmental protection. Earth Day is a worldwide event, and it is participated in over 190 countries. And there is an annual theme every year. And this year's theme is Invest in Our Planet. So you may be asking yourself, why are we talking about Earth Day? Because it really doesn't have any kind of nutrition impact. I thought the same thing until earlier this year. I want to share some statistics with you. Almost 40% of the Earth landmass is used for agriculture. 70% of our freshwater reserves goes towards agriculture production. Our human food systems create a third of the global greenhouse gas emissions. And the most sobering statistic that I read is that within our lifetime, food is going to be the biggest contributor to climate change.
Incredible, Susie.
I know. It's really sobering to know that all we're doing is supporting ourselves. And yet we're having this huge impact to the health of our planet.
What do you, Susie, what encompasses the human food systems?
So that would be grocery stores, food industry, as far as the big players, Kellogg's, General Mills, fast food restaurants, all of the packaging that goes into grocery store items, as well as styrofoam when you do takeout meals. So it's a big portion of the,
a lot.
It does. All the trucking, all of the shipping. So all of that contributes to greenhouse gas emissions. All the, like the livestock, all of that is encompassed in that one term. So I thought, that's no way to celebrate Earth Day, Susie. Let's focus on what we can do as individuals to help reduce the greenhouse gas emissions that we create. So today we're going to focus in on 3 points. We're going to talk about how one diet change can not only improve the health of the environment, but improve our health. We're also going to talk about how to increase the nutritional value of the food that we purchase while decreasing energy costs. And then the last topic that we're going to discuss today is What is the food industry doing to help reduce their greenhouse gas emissions? So I read an article this past February that was published in the Journal of Clinical Nutrition. This article talked about how making one diet change can vastly decrease greenhouse gas emissions, and it surrounds beef. Eating less beef has the potential to decrease emissions by 30%. Now, I thought that doesn't seem real. How can cows create that much greenhouse gas emissions?
I thought the same thing. I thought, why are we picking on the cows? What's wrong with cows? I had cows in my backyard growing up.
I know.
But I bet you're going to share with us why it's cows.
I am, but I mean, you think about it. We raise hogs. We raise chickens. We have egg factories. We have turkey farms. What is it about cows? It's the emission of methane that creates the biggest impact on greenhouse gas emissions. Now, as I'm sure most of you know, cows are ruminant animals, and so they have two compartments to store food in. They ingest grains and feed. It goes into one compartment and it ferments. And that's where most of that methane is created. Now, as you can see, I've put down that 60% of that emission of methane goes to belching, not to flatulence, but to belching. The remaining part of that methane emission is within the manure that they deposit.
Wow. I wonder if they could take some kind of omeprazole or something to help with that. That'd be fabulous.
It would be fabulous.
But I have a feeling you're going to share with us something that might help in that.
Well, you know, there are some researchers that are looking at the feed that is given to cows to see if they can help reduce that methane production. Burger King started a campaign where they were introducing lemongrass to the feed. Now, it did have an effect, but unfortunately, it was at the wrong end. It was decreasing flatulence and not decreasing the belching. So stay tuned, Karen.
Yeah, we will. We will.
They're working on that to try to help reduce that natural production of the methane. Now, the other way that cattle create inadvertently towards the greenhouse gas emissions is by the destruction of forest land, especially in the Amazon rainforest. When that land is destroyed and cleared, it's then used to graze the cattle. So decreasing your consumption of beef helps to decrease the methane production as well as the clearing of forest land.
Yeah, you know, last night I was looking at some of this information, and this is just, I'm marveled at how I don't know more about this growing up with farms all around me. But as you mentioned that, I started seeing some cattle feeder farms, and they were depressing to look at. These cows where they're just, I mean, the land is empty and it's just cows everywhere. And it was kind of, you know, sobering and depressing. So yes, luckily I grew up with farms that had nice grass and nice trees. So that was, hopefully we'll go in that direction in the future. But yes, to see the forest being destroyed.
So now that we have a basic idea of how eating less beef is going to support the earth, what happens to us when we eat less beef? When we eat less beef, we drastically reduce our risk of 6 diseases just by making that one diet change. So please embrace Meatless Mondays. I know that's not a new term, and I would love to ask the question, how many people participate now in Meatless Mondays or a meatless meal during the week?
Can you raise your hand? Does that work on this?
Yeah, I see your hand raised.
Okay. Caitlin's family does as well.
Excellent.
You know, and what's so exciting is I think as dietitians, we teach our patients through all these years to eat less beef for the health benefits. And now knowing that, you know, we're helping the environment. I mean, that just gives us more motivation for the people, our kids and our grandkids that follow us. Yes, it's wonderful.
Not only do you get a health benefit, but you can also save money by eating less beef. Animal protein tends to be the most expensive thing in the grocery store, and consuming less beef is going to keep your money in your piggy bank.
That rainy day.
That's right. Now, what about plant-based proteins? You know, that seems to be the new rage right now. And yeah, plant-based proteins can reduce land use, water use, as well as greenhouse gas emissions. And I listed a couple companies that create plant-based proteins that you can purchase within the grocery store. I personally have not tried any of the plant-based proteins. And we'll get into that in the next slide. But Karen, have you tried any of the plant-based proteins?
Yeah, well, I prefer the black bean burgers that Morningstar Farms has. I just bought Beyond Meat last night, some sausage patties, and I was trying to get my husband to try one this morning. I always have him try things before I try them. And honestly, it required starting the oven or the stove, and we are microwave people in the morning, so we're gonna have to wait. I'll have to get back to you on
that. Oh, I love it. Now, did you happen to look at the ingredients to see if it was soy-based?
It was pea protein.
Oh, yeah.
And quite a bit of sodium and a lot of ingredients that, you know, takes a while to decipher how to say. So yeah. Yeah, it's a processed meat.
It is. And so I read a great article in Food Insight, and they compared a plant-based protein to a beef patty. And what they found were the following. The nutritional differences were fairly minor. However, the plant-based protein was higher in sodium, which you just mentioned. It's higher in calories by about 25 to 30 kilocalories per serving. And it's really high in saturated fat compared to the beef patty, which really shocked me. I did not expect that.
Yeah, I would look up one of the fast food restaurants, same thing. Saturated fat was on the roof.
And so one thing I do want to point out is that a plant-based meat is not a whole plant food. And so when you talk about your black bean burger, I feel like that may be a better option than the plant-based meat, because at least you know a majority of the contents in that black bean burger are black beans. And so potentially a plant-based meat would be a good segue occasionally, but you can also achieve less greenhouse gas emissions and less water use and less land use by eating more lentils and beans and tofu.
You know, Susie, last night my husband and I were discussing this, and I know you can maybe relate to this, maybe not the younger dietitians, but I grew up in the restaurant business. My father and my uncle had a restaurant, and in the 70s, they came out with burgers that had part soy in them. And the reason they started going to the soy burgers was the rate of malnutrition in some of the third world countries. And so they were trying to find a cheaper version of burgers or a way to eat meat. And I remember watching those burgers grill, and you can look them up on the internet. They were not attractive whatsoever when they, I mean, you could actually see the beans and the gelling of the soybeans in the burgers. But my husband and I both agreed that they were quite tasty, actually. We would like to know, you know, why those don't come back out, because I mean, you could definitely see the soy in the burgers and they were tasty. Do you remember that? I mean, my husband mentioned school lunches in the 70s. He remembered those burgers being on the menu.
I don't.
You packed your lunch.
You know what? I lived so close to school that I would go home for lunch. I lived right across the street, so I went home and I just didn't have that exposure. But that's interesting. And like we've talked about, this is not a new thing. You know, since the 70s, we've been trying to figure out how we can reduce our reliance on animal proteins. So this is just another version of that. So that brings me to discussing the recipe. There's a recipe that was attached to today's invite, and it is rosemary, lentils, and greens over hearty bread. And so I really liked.
Hello?
I think we just lost Susie for a second. There she is. She's back.
There I am.
You might have to reshare your screen, Susie.
Okay, that sounds good. I don't know what happened. Oh, let's see. Share screen. There we go. There we are. So I've made this recipe a couple of times. I'm not a big kale fan, so I use spinach. And I also use canned lentils because I wanted to speed up the process of cooking. And I just want to bring that out. You know, I think a lot of people think that canned beans or canned lentils are not as nutritious, but that's not true. You don't lose any nutritional value by using the canned products. And I was able to whip this recipe up in about 10 to 15 minutes by using the canned lentils. What about you, Karen? Did you try this recipe?
Well, when you asked me to try it, I followed the recipe, Susie.
Being the good dietitian that you are, of course.
And I found the French green lentils at Target. It was the last bag. So yeah, and they're delicious. Absolutely. I got the kale. I bought the 2 bunches, and of course I trimmed off the stems, and I should have measured it because I think I ended up with more than 8 cups. So it was a little kale, but but overall, my husband and my youngest, who loves anything I prepare, they gave it a 7, which I was excited about. We loved the extra garlic on the bread. And then the next day I thought that it was more delicious because, you know, those seasonings just kind of bleed into it. And then I used some leftovers last night into a turkey meatloaf. And it
Nice.
was quite tasty. So it's a great item to use in leftovers. So what did you think of your dish?
I really liked it. The second time I made it, I added mushrooms to it. And I really like mushrooms because of their meaty texture. And so it's a great substitute when you're pulling away from animal protein.
Mm.
And like you, I loved the garlic rubbed toast. I'm going to do that now
Yeah, I am
for a
too.
lot of things. I had just never even thought about it
I hadn't
before.
either. And when I was rubbing it, I thought, is this doing anything? And sure enough, that little clove disappeared.
Nice, nice. So for those of you who want to try a meatless Monday dish, you could try this one. And you have some different ideas of substitutions and yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk about other ways that we can increase the nutritional value while we're decreasing energy costs. This is not going to be any big surprise. By eating more whole plant foods, you're drastically reducing greenhouse gas emissions and drastically increasing your nutritional intake of your meals. Buy in season. Now, I don't know about you, but buying strawberries and asparagus when they're in season increases the flavor, and it also increases the nutritional value because those fruits and vegetables are allowed to ripen naturally. You're also decreasing the shipping costs and the flight costs. I don't know about you, Karen, but when I was doing some research for this presentation, I had no idea so many things were flown in. Berries are one of the biggest foods that get flown around the world. And so just being mindful and buying berries when they're actually in season, you can have a big impact on reducing greenhouse gas emissions.
I noticed that with grapes a lot. They're either from Peru or Colombia. So it is hard to even find grapes in the US sometimes.
Buy local as often as possible. I love the fact that there are so many farmers markets. I don't care how big or how small your town is. Over the past 10 years, farmers markets have exploded. And what better way to support your community, increase the nutritional value of what you're buying, decreasing transport time, and getting a chance to actually talk to the farmer. No matter what it is that you're buying, whether you're buying the eggs or the greens from the farmer, that gives you a chance to actually ask questions, if you do, about their farming process. Another way that you can increase the nutritional value and decrease energy costs is to grow your own. No matter where you live, you can always stick a pepper plant into a pot. Even if you get baby peppers, they're going to taste so much better than what you can get in the grocery store.
Yes, definitely.
Do more cooking at home. And the last one is, if you have the opportunity, do composting. Pulling food scraps out of landfills, again, has a huge impact on greenhouse gas emissions. Some communities throughout the US offer a composting service, and I feel lucky enough to live in one of those communities. I put out my 5-gallon green bucket every week, and the composting company comes around, picks up my bucket, and in the spring, I get rewarded with compost that I can then put back onto the soil to only increase the nutrients.
How long have you had that service?
I know it. I know it's it costs, but I feel like it's worth it because it's pulling those food scraps out of the landfill.
Nice.
Now, Karen and I have been collaborating on this presentation for a couple of days, and Karen came across this great app that's called Climate Hero. It takes about 5 minutes, and you can determine if you are a climate villain, a climate consumer, or a climate hero. It's just a fun way to check to see what kind of an impact you have on the environment.
Yeah, it is. And, you know, I found, so it's divided into, I think it's 36 questions, and it does, you answer them very quickly. It doesn't ask a lot of details, but it's divided into house, travel, and consumption. And I kind of played around with it. And if you eat, I put in that I ate meat 4 to 7 times a week, and I became a climate villain. But once I reduced that to what I normally do, which is about 3 times a week, 1 to 3 times a week, I became a climate consumer. But interestingly enough, and we knew this, we have very old vehicles. We have 3 old vehicles, and they're SUVs, and we have a boat, and that is where we really need to improve, because that really shot up my score. So it is interesting. I encourage everyone to go on it. I mean, you learn just from answering the questions on areas that you can probably improve that maybe you just didn't realize.
Let's talk about what the food industry is doing. I was really pleased to see that all of the major players, Kellogg's, General Mills, Nestle, they are all being proactive. As you can see, Nestle plans to be 100% recyclable or reusable on all of their packaging by 2025. That is not far away at all. And Kellogg's and General Mills are right behind them. So that warmed my heart that we don't have to do all of this all on our own, that these companies are also realizing the impact that they also have on the Earth's health. And then I wanted to highlight some fast food restaurants, because life happens and you can't always cook at home. What happens when you travel? What happens when you're at the airport and you need to grab something quickly? I've highlighted 4 different restaurants that have taken initiatives to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. Chipotle is number 1. They go so far as they donate their used equipment and furniture to schools and nonprofits. McDonald's is surprisingly right behind them. They created a net zero energy restaurant at Disney World. And what that means is they have created enough reusable energy to offset their costs. Starbucks sources almost all of their coffee from ethical practices. And Panera wants to be climate positive by 2050. Now, sometimes this can seem really daunting. I mean, can consumers truly drive change? 40 years ago, no grocery store had organic products, and now all of the mainstream players do. About 10, 15 years ago, consumers started to demand that high fructose corn syrup and trans fats be eliminated from products, and the food industry heard us. I don't know about you, but every time I go to the grocery store, I see more gluten-free and vegan products on the shelves. And before the pandemic, nobody was shopping for groceries online. And now online grocery sales are not going away. So yeah, we do have the power to make those changes. In summary, what's good for personal health is good for the planet. Eat less beef to improve your health as well as improve greenhouse gas emissions. Buy in season, buy local, grow your own, cook please, and compost if you can. And when you're away from home, do your best to focus in on fast food companies that support the planet.
Very good.
Thank you all so much for joining us today. I've listed some resources for those who are interested in doing some more discovery. This is a great resource if you don't know what season beets are in your particular state. Reducitarian is an organization that was started by Brian Capeman. He feels like reducitarian is a better term than flexitarian, and he has some great TED Talks that you can look at. The Monday Campaigns is a great place to get some meatless Monday dishes and recipes. And here's a link to the Climate Hero. Now, Karen, do we have any questions?
Let's see. Yes, we do have a couple. Can I further reduce the greenhouse gas emissions by using plant-based milks and cheeses? What a great question.
You can. I didn't focus in on cow's milk and cow's cheese because it does have an impact at reducing greenhouse gas emissions, but not to the extent that decreasing beef does. However, you can certainly rotate through the different plant-based milks, and that will add variety and decrease greenhouse gas emissions. So if you want to further your impact, most certainly start to introduce some of these other plant-based foods.
Excellent. And then we have another question. How much beef do I need to cut from my diet to have a positive impact on the environment?
What I found through some of the research that I did, it indicates that cutting down your beef intake by 25% can have a definite positive impact on the environment. So if you're eating beef 3 times a week, cut it down to twice a week, at least to start with. And then if you really want to get brave, go down to 1. And you'll only be helping yourself and the planet.
I think a good point aspect of beef is just thinking of how also the serving size that restaurants feed us. I mean, we technically, our serving size we suggest to patients and to ourselves is 3 to 4 ounces of meat. And so when you're thinking of those restaurants, easily you can, if you do choose that meal to be your beef or your pork or whatever, certainly just reducing that size of the portion to, the 30 grams, which our bodies use very efficiently.
That's a great point, Karen.
Let's see. Let me see if there's any other questions. I think you have answered the question. This was such a fantastic topic. Susie, I am embarrassed that I just didn't know what I didn't know. And this was, reading through some of the references and resources that you provided me, I thought, wow, we can do so much just by little steps. And how easy is that to just, okay, we're going to have fish 1 more night a week, or chicken 1 more night a week, or go to those plant-based proteins. And the impact it makes on our waste, as well as our health and our pocketbook and our environment. And then, and then our kids are seeing what we're doing that is providing for their future, of course. So
exactly. Yes.
important topic.
Yeah. Thank you all so much for participating
Oh,
today.
let's see. Maybe these are thank yous. Yes, we got a thank you from Maria saying,
Yay.
thanking us for all the great work we do and for the presentation. So yes,
Yay.
thank you.
Thank you,
all
everybody.
for attending.
Yeah, this has been delightful. Thank you so much.